Seven Brews is a genie in a bottle brand. Only just a few years ago, they had only 30 stores. Now, over 400 and counting. Robert Abdallah saw the momentum early on and went all in. His franchisee group is opening 15 locations a year. And in this episode, we unpack the secret sauce behind Seven Brews' insane growth and why Robert believes it's the next exciting brand in the QSR industry. Robert, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Doing well, Daniel. Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
It's my pleasure. You and I talked a couple of weeks ago at this point, and we spoke about Seven Brews and the journey that the brand has gone through. And now you most recently entered the brand as a franchisee. So there's tons and tons of things that we can talk about what you're working on today. But I always like to ask my guests, before we dive into the present moment, tell us a little about yourself. How did you get into this crazy business?
Yeah, so my father was in restaurants growing up. He was VP of franchising for Brew International in the early 90s. So I started as a unpaid busboy, a couple of his concepts, and then basically was in the operations part of the business all the way through high school into my college career, and migrated over to marketing analytics and finance. But it's been a great journey. He's been a great mentor. You know, I think I owe everything to a lot of mentors in my life, but definitely my father and my mom. So it's been great.
What were some of the things you learned in the early days about operating a restaurant? What did you get to see behind the scenes that made you want to decide to continue your career here?
Yeah, it's definitely a teamwork mentality. I mean, the servers rely on the busboy. If you run the back of the house, get food out correctly on time. It's really a teamwork environment, but it's all about the people that you're serving and the people that you get to work with in this industry. It's really like no other, the camaraderie that, the friendships and the camaraderie that you make with other restaurateurs, but also your fellow servers and management team.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And so Brinker at the time, when your father was running franchising, what concepts did they have under their belt?
So they had Chili's, of course. I believe they had Cozy Mel on the border was part of the portfolio at the time. I think Maggiano's came a little later in so I think there were about 4 or 5 concepts at the time. And I just remember it as a great culture, especially as a kid. They had a lot of annual cookouts. I think we went to Bill Bates. He's a former Cowboy ranch, and I got to play softball and have a lot of good barbecues. Being a chili head really was ingrained in me from the beginning.
I actually am not familiar with this, but at the time or even today, does Brinker franchise any of its concepts? Is it all corporate owned?
Yeah, it definitely from an international standpoint.
Right. They franchise.
Most of it is franchise. They also had, I believe at the time, some franchising domestically as well. Mm-hmm. They were pretty heavily company owned, though. It wasn't necessarily model work. They owned 10 to 15 locations. I believe they had a pretty significant amount that were company owned. I believe they had some markets that were franchised at the time.
Amazing. Yeah. And then you also had the really cool opportunity to work at one of the larger multi-unit franchising groups, right? At the, a couple of years ago with Tasty Group. What was that experience like from the standpoint of understanding the franchising operation?
Yeah, it was a great opportunity. When I came in, we had 200 locations. We grew to 400 by the time I left. A lot of it there was some organic growth, but a lot of acquisition. A lot of mom and pop, buying, 7 units, buying 20 units. So a lot of growth on the M&A side of the business and a lot of learning, specifically with our Burger King units. We had, I believe, about 60 to 70 in the Midwest. And I think at the time, the brand was struggling to regain its footing.
This is in the 2010s, right? The 10s era.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
3G Capital coming in and trying to put some fuel in the brand.
Exactly. So there was definitely a brand refresh that was going on, which I think they're still doing today. They came out with, the Whopper branding. And it was interesting. I think they were a really good franchise group to work with and really committed to making sure that we have the resources we need to revitalize our system and continue to grow. But it was definitely challenging. We also had a significant build-to-suit strategy at the time, and some of our locations are a little over levered on the rent side. So it was a good time to understand while you can delay your capital, you have to have a good strategy in place when you're growing out a brand through different leasing and land strategies. So
Curious about that before we dive into Seven Brews. What do you mean by that? Different leasing strategies?
So, I mean, when you're looking to grow out a brand, there's opportunities to buy the land. So you can buy the land, build out the asset, and flip back out the land to minimize kind of your upfront capital, and then take that capital to reinvest. You can work with a developer to come in and do that for you, fully put up the capital to build out the asset, and then they make money from flipping out that land, and they set the rent in order to make the returns that they need for how much capital they put into it. Or you can go at it as more just a ground lease, where you're putting up all the capital to build out the assets, and you have a landlord that you're paying rent to, which is usually more favorable in terms of the rent commitment. But again, you're putting up all the capital up front to build out that asset.
Absolutely. That makes a ton of sense. And so it seems like you got an amazing experience, like seeing the operations early on, and then you worked a couple of years in finance and you did analytics. So you got a chance to kind of see the big picture and the decisions that are made at the top level. What made you want to pull the trigger and get into becoming a franchisee yourself?
Really, I fell in love with the brand. I was gaining a lot of experience at Tasty Restaurant Group, had a great team there. And Norman, one of our managing partners, met Ryan at a conference, and Ryan was like, "Hey, come and check us out, Northwest Arkansas. We're growing this thing. We have, 2,500 pins already signed up. I think it's a great opportunity." So
how many units did they have at the time? How many units was Seven Brews at the time when you guys met them?
It's probably a guess, but it was probably around, 30 to 50, somewhere in that ballpark. And that was only 2.5 years ago.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. Not so long ago, for sure.
The growth story has been amazing. I think they're at, at 450, north of, 450 now. Yeah. I mean, Norm was like, "Hey, let's come see this brand." So went up to Fayetteville, and I mean, the unit economics were, one of the top in the industry, but really the culture, the people is why I fell in love with it. And that wasn't, we also had toured some stands outside of Northwest Arkansas, because your first thought is, okay, great. Of course, the culture is great where, everything was started, and, that team, that core culture. But everywhere we traveled, it was the same. And we thought, this is something special. And you don't see that too much in the industry. There's definitely a lot of concepts that are really doing well right now, but we knew we wanted to get in.
Tell me, for my audience that doesn't know about the Seven Brews story, what is that Seven Brews story? How do they come up with the concept? What makes their culture so unique?
Yeah, everything's about the people, and cultivating kindness is really their vision, their main value. Cultivating kindness in everything you do, and the relationship you have with each other and also the customer is something really special. When we were in Northwest Arkansas, regular customers would come around and hand out something they crocheted for the team, or they would bring donuts almost every morning to the team. And these are just customers. They're not anyone affiliated with the brand. And that loyalty and that love that you could see, and the interactions that you saw with, when people were taking orders, was really like no other. So from the way that they hired and the way that they organically developed their culture, it was something special.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've never had a chance to try Seven Brews, but I'm not going to say the name of the competitor, but there is a competitor that I went to for the first time, and I felt this almost like I went to the drive-thru and I felt I felt a certain way that I've never felt before with a brand where the person comes up to you, they talk to you. I didn't know what I wanted, so they walked me through the entire menu, didn't rush me at all. Like there was a line, wrapped around the corner, and they didn't rush me, and they gave me a good recommendation, and they were also extremely funny. And when you and I talked, last time, you speak a lot about the culture of your team, and there's an aspect of hospitality that I'm trying really hard to understand how we can codify it, and how can we instill more hospitality in quick service and fast casual. When you're looking to hire someone, what are the types of attributes that you look for in a team member?
We have four values that we try to live out as a leadership team, but also we hire for. It's real people, real connection, real talk, and real energy. And so we're looking for someone that when we're, interviewing for a new store for baristas, we're looking for someone that is able to make a connection at the table. You can kind of see that spark in them, their excitement, their curiosity, and they're genuinely themselves as well. So that's really what we're looking for. We had when we came on, we already had 4 people that came out of Northwest Arkansas, and the franchise or did this intentionally. They sent out their best of the best when they were at 30 stores and they were signing 2,000, 3,000 pens. They sent out the best of their best to each of the franchisees, and I think that's one of the ways that we've been able to keep the culture, but also they know what a barista for 7 Brew should look like.
I see.
And organically, those are our core values. We didn't try to create something. It was like, okay, team, what is a barista? What is a 7 Brew employee? What do they value? And so it's been easy having that team and being able to help us from the hiring aspect and really continue that culture.
I love that. There is another brand that I'm very close with that I think also embodies some of the same principles and ethos of 7 Brews, and they send out their best franchisees to go train new franchisees. And I think that's extremely, extremely important because right now I think 7 Brews has a very strong pulse. The corporate has a very strong pulse on what's going on and where they want the direction of the brand to go, especially because they're still very new of a concept. But over time, as brands get bigger and as brands expand across the nation, I think that corporate sometimes loses its touch with reality and what's boots on the ground. And if you have good franchisees that live and breathe the brand and it can go and spread the gospel and can go and teach other people about what it takes to run an effective business, I think that is an amazing formula. But you need to have that franchisee optimism. And there's so many people I've talked to on this show where leaders are coming in and trying to revive that optimism in the franchisee network. So for you guys, how do you and the other franchisees keep in touch and stay connected and help each other out other than just bringing in the best people to train new franchisees?
Yeah, I think the franchisor does a really good job of, connecting the full system together. We have multiple conferences a year, from lender days to operational conferences that they bring in all the executives, all the managing partners of the franchise system, but also they'll bring in the training crew and the district managers. So it really creates the opportunity to connect with them there and continue to keep conversations going outside of that. So
I love it. This is a curveball. As we were talking, I'm thinking, what are you guys going to do about the massive lines? Any new technology or any new, I think that it's such a, you caught a genie in a bottle, and, we see these TikToks of people lining up for, it seems like hours to get this delicious coffee and energy drinks. What are you guys doing to get more customers in the door quicker?
Actually, we've been able to handle it pretty well with our current operational model. We add more bodies, obviously, that we call them texters, the people that go out and take the orders.
Yes.
It's very key for the brand, but we've done this since the beginning. We invest a lot on labor up front, and we continue to invest in it until we reach what we think a maturity is of that stand and start to optimize it. But we're very, very focused on making sure we don't cut labor to the point where we are not getting people, number one, through quickly, And number two, to have that experience of what a 7 Brew is. We have long lines all the time. We'll probably be 15 cars deep, but from order to coffee, we're still giving it out, 3 minutes. So speed is a huge thing for our brand. Not to talk about another competitor, I think that the place you might have visited has one great culture and great products. I'm a regular if there's not a 7 Brew around. But the one thing that misses or is not consistent is the speed component.
Right.
And we've been able to make sure that we continue to invest in the labor to make sure we have people, out there taking the orders, and we're able to have high throughput.
Right. Do you guys measure the speed of service? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So from once the order is starting to go, so if they start entering in a medium iced blondie,
right,
from when they get it at the lane table and we clear it off the screen, that's basically our speed of service metric that we use.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. So as soon as the first line item in the POS gets entered, that's when the order begins, and then as soon as they drive off, I'm curious what the total wait time is, but yeah, the speed of service component, which you can't really, I mean, you can technically improve total wait time if you send more people out to start getting the orders ahead of time. But then if you do that, then it comes at a cost of the speed of service component, right? Because you're taking more orders than what you should be taking in order to get a lower speed of service score. So I think that's
we don't have a data point. We don't have a data point for it, but in our observations and we have a commitment from our team members to get to the last car in line or any car within 45 seconds. So
wow,
you can add 45 seconds to that, and if we're not hitting that, then we have conversations about, okay, what can we do better? Do we need more textures? What do we do to make sure that we're getting to the back of the line as quickly as we can? Because you don't want someone waiting 3 minutes to get their order taken, and then the 3 minutes, and that's a 6-minute actual time, right?
Absolutely. So. Oh, that's actually super interesting. Then that means you are sacrificing this overall speed of service, let's just call it metric, to make sure that every customer gets service as soon as they pull up to the drive-thru.
Yeah, because there's some anxiety about it too when you're just sitting there and you're waiting for your order to be taken. Once your order's taken, you're like, okay, great,
Yes, you're committed. You're committed.
You're committed. It's like, I can listen to tunes really quick, So yeah, we're all about getting to the car, having that experience with them as quick as you can, and then everyone inside, making the drinks, they're quick too. So
that's amazing. Great. That's amazing. How many people are in a stand? What do you guys typically run?
Yeah, in busy periods, we're running at least 2 of our machines. We have 3 machines. We have a backup machine if we need someone to help out both of the lane machines, and then we have probably anywhere from 4 to 6 to 7 textures out taking the orders, and then we will also
4 people
staff each. Yeah, and then we'll also staff each lane table. So we have 2 lanes all the way through. So we'll have someone that's handing out the drinks and having those conversations before they get the drinks at the lane table. So I would say,
wow,
we're probably 6, probably at minimum 10, but you're probably running 12 to 16 during the busy time.
Wow, that's amazing. I actually would think that it would be at max 2 people working the lanes, but you're telling me you have 4 to 6. Wow, that's incredible. So 4 to 6, and then the rest, half of them are inside the store making the drinks. Yeah. Wow, that's an operation.
Those textures can always float back in and do restocks or dishes or whatever else needs to be done, But we want to make sure that we get to those cars, and we have to have the people to get the orders in. And it's during busy times, they're continually taking orders, as you've seen the lines, but the lines keep flowing and it keeps stacking 10, 15 deep, and it just revolving operations.
Well, that's amazing. I think that for any potential franchisee watching this, definitely take a look at the 7 Brews franchising page. They'll have all the details on AUVs and what it takes to get into the brand. But where are you guys focused in the next year, right? I think right now you guys have about 12 to 14 locations?
Yep. We just opened our 12. We'll be
12
at
location.
16 by end of year. We'll be doing about 15 per year after
Amazing.
that in our current markets. So we have, luckily we have a lot of great people that are baristas and shift leads.
Right.
We have a great bench on the operations side. We probably have 15 people that I can name off right now that could be stand managers for us tomorrow. So luckily we have the bench to grow.
Right.
So we're committed to building up that pipeline, finding, A+ sites and keep building this thing out.
I think when last time we spoke, we bonded over the shared enthusiasm, or at least the nostalgia of the enthusiasm that we saw in the restaurant industry 10, 15, 20 years ago, where you see people, coming through the ranks of the operations. And some of my favorite stories, the reason why I began this podcast is because I talked to an El Pollo Loco franchisee who started at the age of 16 washing dishes, and now he's one of the largest franchisees in the El Pollo Loco network. And unfortunately, there is this negativity around the restaurant industry. I think most recently in the last couple of years, with labor becoming more expensive and restaurants trying to cut as much as they can to stay alive, we don't really talk about the career opportunities, the growth opportunities for individuals. And from what you just mentioned, it sounds like being at a Seven Brews is probably a great place to begin your career, and the world is your oyster. Do you believe in that?
I do. Yeah. I mean, we have 2 district managers that are early to mid 20s. Back in the day, you would have to be a GM for a decent amount of time before you're able to move up into that role. So it's going to be amazing, all the stories that come out of Seven Brew. There'll be, multiple CEOs, I believe, that come out of this industry, or other restaurateurs that are, building other brands, that hopefully, carry through kind of the core of building out the culture and investing in people. So Norman didn't, I'm sure he wishes he would have graduated college, but he didn't graduate college. He started as a dishwasher in my grandparents' family restaurant, making no money as well. And he's a success story that you don't necessarily need to have that to have a successful career in this industry. And I think
100%.
That's definitely true for our team. And I think it's still a great industry to get into and be able to live out, your dream of taking care of people and providing them good experience with good food and good drinks.
Awesome. If you had to say one piece of advice from your experience, one piece of advice to the Seven Brews corporate team to make sure that this brand sustains for the long run, what would it be?
Yeah, keep the culture. I think John Davidson has done a great job. He's the CEO of Seven Brew right now, and he embodies the culture through and through. So as they continue to grow out, make sure that they build out that leadership team to keep that component in the brand. And I think that flows down from there. I mean, the franchisees can also need to be able to do that. But if you don't have that leader that's picking franchisees and training up the system that doesn't have those, that core value of cultivating kindness and spreading that through, you could lose the brand. So that's the biggest thing. I think we're an amazing time in the Seven Brew life, and I hope to see, the same passion, the same social media posts about Seven Brew when we're at 2,000, 3,000 locations, nationwide and internationally. So
Incredible. Thank you so much, Robert. Last question for you before we wrap it up. What is your favorite drink?
So I do somewhat basic. It's a medium iced blondie with cinnamon sprinkles with 4 shots. I have to get going in the morning. So
wow, yeah, I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad now.
Yeah, caramel and vanilla with nice freve and a lot of espresso. So.
I love it. Robert, thank you so much for coming on. I think you have an incredible story, and for all the franchisees that are watching this, that are considering investing in the brand, Robert, I hope I hope you can take some calls and spread the word. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah. Thank you.
You take care.